5 Notorious African Warlords. Hello Explorers, welcome to another interesting video presented to you by The Explorer, and thanks for watching. In this video, we shall be presenting to you the top 5 warlords in Africa. A warlord is a military commander, especially an aggressive regional commander with individual autonomy. Besides the activities of those men, one thing that stands out is the initial support from the West, and they are turning away when push comes to shove to brand these individuals warlords. In this video, we shall look at the 5 most notorious African warlords. If you are new here, welcome. Be sure to subscribe and turn notifications so you don't miss any of our videos. Number 5. Joseph Rao Kony. Joseph Rao Kony is a Ugandan insurgent and the leader of the Lord's Resistance Army, LRA, a guerrilla group that formerly operated in Uganda. While initially purporting to fight against government oppression, the LRA allegedly turned against Kony's own supporters, supposedly to purify the Akoli people and turn Uganda into a theocracy. Kony proclaims himself the spokesperson of God and a spirit medium, and he claims he is visited by a multinational host of 13 spirits, including a Chinese phantom. Kony has been accused by government entities of ordering the abduction of children to become child soldiers and sex slaves. 66,000 children became soldiers and 2 million people were displaced internally from 1986 to 2009. In defending himself in 2006, Kony proclaimed, "I am a freedom fighter, not a terrorist. We don't have any children, we only have combatants." Kony was indicted in 2005 for war crimes and crimes against humanity by ICC in The Hague, but he has evaded capture. By April 2017, given the shrinkage of his army from 3,000 to 100, both USA and Uganda ended the hunt for Kony and the LRA, believing that the LRA was no longer a significant security risk to Uganda. Number 4. Muammar Gaddafi. Gaddafi was a controversial and highly divisive world figure who, according to many, evoked the extremes of passion, supreme adoration from his following, and bitter contempt from his opponents. Gaddafi's domestic popularity stemmed from his overthrow of the monarchy led by King Idris, his removal of the Italian settlers and both American and British air bases from Libyan territory, and his redistribution of the country's land on a more equitable basis, as well as his achievements in medical care. Throughout the 2000s, the normally serious proceedings of annual summits of the Arab League were almost guaranteed to be disrupted by the Libyan leader's antics, whether it was lighting up a cigarette or blowing smoke into the face of his neighbor, or tossing insults at Gulf rulers and Palestinians, or declaring himself King of Kings of Africa. Dubbed the Mad Dog of the Middle East, Gaddafi became a boogeyman for Western governments, who presented him as the vicious dictator of an oppressed people. His administration was criticized for the human rights abuses, which included the repression of dissent, public executions, and the arbitrary detention of hundreds of opponents, some of whom reported being tortured. One of the most prominent examples of this was a massacre that took place in Abu Salim prison in June of 1996, where Human Rights Watch estimated that 1,270 prisoners were massacred. Non-conformists abroad were labeled stray dogs, publicly threatened with death, and sometimes killed by government hit squads or returned home by force to face imprisonment or death. His 42 years of reign made its ignominious and grisly end when the NCC forces found him hiding in a tunnel following a NATO airstrike on his convoy as he tried to make a break from his last stronghold, the city of Sirte, where it all began. The exact circumstances of his death remain in dispute, either killed in crossfire, summarily executed, or lynched and dragged through the streets by jubilant, battle-hardened fighters. Number 3. Charles Taylor. As a protege of Muammar Gaddafi, it's no surprise that he makes a list next to his mentor. Charles MacArthur Gankey Taylor was the president of Liberia from 1997 to 2003. After earning a degree in the US, he returned to Liberia and worked for then-President Samuel Doe. In 1983, Taylor was dismissed on the charges of embezzling $1 million and eventually fled to the US, where he was arrested. On September 15, 1985, with the help of 4 other inmates, Taylor escaped from prison, arrived in Libya where he started receiving guerrilla training from Muammar Gaddafi, subsequently becoming his protege. Funded by Gaddafi, Taylor formed an army and led the coup against Samuel Doe, and following Doe's execution, Taylor gained control of a large portion of the country and became one of the most prominent warlords in Africa. During his term of office, Taylor was accused of war crimes and crimes against humanity as a result of his involvement in the Sierra Leone Civil War between 1991 and 2002. Domestically, opposition to his government grew, culminating in the outbreak of the Second Liberian Civil War. By 2003, Taylor had lost control of much of the countryside and was formally indicted by the Special Court for Sierra Leone. That year, he resigned as a result of growing international pressure and went into exile in Nigeria. In 2006, the newly elected president of Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, formally requested his extradition. He was tried, found guilty and sentenced to 50 years in prison in 2012 of all 11 charges levied by the Special Court, including terror, murder, and rape. Number 2. Idi Amin. In the 1970s, Idi Amin Dada was the military dictator and self-proclaimed president of Uganda, renowned for his larger-than-life ego, as he gave himself many titles that ultimately added up to His Excellency, President for Life Field Marshal Al-Hajj Dr. Idi Amin Dada, VC, DSO, MC, Lord of all the beasts of the earth and fishes of the sea, and conqueror of the British Empire in Africa in general, and Uganda in particular. Starting as an assistant cook, Amin quickly moved through the ranks to become one of the only 2 Ugandans who had ever been commissioned officers in the British colonial army, becoming lieutenant in 1961. After independence, in 1962, he was promoted to captain and the following year to major. During his time in the military, Idi Amin gained popularity through his athletic prowess, great height, powerful build, and he was a champion swimmer and Uganda's light heavyweight. With these strengths, he had gained a high rank in Milton Obote's presidency before their fallout. Once Amin heard of Obote's plans against him, he carried out a successful coup in 1971, after which he promised the people of Uganda that he had no interest in ruling as he was a soldier. But history has taught us time and time again not to trust the words of anyone who carries out a coup. Amin declared himself president of Uganda, ruling by decree, and renamed the presidential lodge the command post. Obote, who took refuge in Tanzania, along with 20,000 Ugandans, attempted a failed coup to regain Uganda in 1972. Amin retaliated by purging the Ugandan army of Obote's supporters, predominantly those from the Akoli and Lango ethnic groups. Victims ranged from ethnic groups, religious leaders, journalists, artists, senior bureaucrats, judges, lawyers, students and intellectuals, criminal suspects, foreign nationals, and the River Nile was dumping ground for the regime. The exact number of people killed is unknown, but an estimate by Amnesty International says 500,000. In 1978, Amin's attempt to annex Tanzania's Kagera region was his downfall, as Tanzanian President Julius Nyerere had his troops invade Uganda, capturing Kampala and ousted Amin from power. Amin went into exile, first in Libya, then Iraq, and finally in Saudi Arabia, where he lived until his death on 16 August 2003. Number 1. JeanBertrand Bokassa. Amongst the men in this category, Bokassa was the only one to serve both as president and emperor in the same country. After losing both parents in 1927, he was left in the care of Franciscan missionaries at just 6 years old. JeanBertrand Bokassa began his military career in World War II, fighting for the French colonial army, receiving several honors, awards and distinctions, after which he joined the Central African Armed Forces. As a cousin of the CAR president, David Dacko, Bokassa quickly rose through the ranks of the new National Army, becoming the Central African Army's first colonel on December 1, 1964. He loved recognition, which made Dacko to publicly dismiss the likelihood of Bokassa taking control, saying, "Colonel Bokassa only wants to collect medals, and he's too stupid to pull off a coup d'etat." But just a couple years later, the real stupid one was revealed when Bokassa dropped Dacko off the presidency like a rat, forcing him to resign and imprisoning him. The next morning, Bokassa stated over radio, "This is Colonel Bokassa speaking to you. At 3 a.m. this morning, your army took control of the government. The Dacko government has resigned. The hour of justice is at hand. The bourgeoisie is abolished. A new era of equality among all has begun. Central Africans, wherever you may be assured that the army will defend you and your property. Long live the Central African Republic." In the early days of his regime, Bokassa engaged in self-promotion, telling his countrymen that he would give up his power after the country is stable and communist threats eliminated. But his rule became highly unpredictable as he banned all political organizations, imposed men and women between the ages of 18 and 55 to provide proof that they had jobs, or else be fined or imprisoned, banned begging, polygamy, dowries, and female circumcision. On 4th March 1972, he declared himself president for life after surviving a coup attempt in 1974, following the failed one by Banza. For his failed coup, Banza, according to the American news magazine Time, was dragged before a cabinet meeting where Bokassa slashed him with a razor. Guards then beat Banza until his back was broken, dragged him through the streets of Bangui, and finally shot him. He had support from France as well as Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, who after meeting converted to Islam. In 1976, Bokassa converted back to Catholicism and transformed the republic into the Central African Empire, with himself as His Imperial Majesty Bokassa I, formally crowned on 4th December 1977 at 10:43 a.m. with the title Emperor of Central Africa by the will of the Central African people, united within the national political party, the Mezan. His regalia-lavish coronation of about $20 million and regime were largely inspired by Napoleon. By January 1979, French support for Bokassa had all but eroded after food riots in Bangui led to a massacre of civilians. The final straw came between 17th and 19th April, when a large number of elementary school students in Bangui and elsewhere in the country were arrested after they had protested against paying for and wearing the expensive government-required school uniforms with Bokassa's image on them, where around 100 children were killed. The massive worldwide press coverage, which followed the deaths of the students, opened the way for a successful coup, which saw French troops invade the Central African Empire and restore former President David Dacko to power, while Bokassa fled to France, where he settled in his Chateau d'Argicourt in the suburb of Paris. He was arrested and tried upon his return from exile in France in 1986 for 14 different charges, including treason, murder, cannibalism, illegal use of property, assault and battery, and embezzlement, to which Bokassa pleaded not guilty to all of the charges. He was first sentenced to death, then to life in solitary confinement, but he was freed in 1993, and he lived a private life in Bangui till his death in 1996. There you have it, explorers. Those were the 5 notorious African warlords. Thanks for watching this video, and if you did enjoy this video, do well to give it a thumbs up. Do not forget to subscribe and share with your friends.